As we already know, the Egyptians considered the heavens to be a gigantic body of water, both the celestial body of the goddess Nut and the vastness of the cosmic ocean Nun, from which the earth was protected by the gods, including Shu, the god of the atmosphere, who held his daughter Nut high above the earth so that she could shield humanity with her body from the waters of chaos. The only way for the gods, personifications of heavenly bodies, and the souls of the dead to travel in the sky and beyond was to use a boat. It seems that this view accompanied the Egyptians from the very beginnings, as evidenced by the fleet of boats buried in the royal necropolis at Abydos, an indispensable means of transport for the souls of the deceased pharaohs of the first dynasty. Hello everyone, my name's Irena. Welcome to my channel Ancient Science Girl. I invite you to a podcast about the history of ancient Egypt. We'll focus on Ra's heavenly journey on the solar barque, a journey that provided light and life to the world during the day, and at night turned into an epic battle for the maintenance of creation and the salvation of humanity. We'll learn about one of the oldest beliefs, the very essence of ancient Egyptian religion. As usual, you'll hear information from original ancient Egyptian sources. The journey of the sun god was the most extensive and frequently described subject in Egyptian religious texts. Ra simply means the sun. Ancient Egyptians didn't differentiate between the sun, a celestial body, and their highest god. Most natural phenomena were given supernatural religious meaning. The beginnings of the cult of the sun god date back to the second dynasty, and the largest center of his cult was Heliopolis in the Nile Delta, where he was worshipped as Atum-Ra, the creator of the universe and the father of the gods. The religion of the city of Iunu, later called by the Greeks the city of the sun Heliopolis, today part of Cairo, had a huge influence on the rulers of the Old Kingdom, who made the cult of Ra a state religion. At this time, Ra took over the features of the early dynastic supreme deity, Horus, and was most often shown with the head of a falcon, carrying on his head a solar disk, surrounded by a Uraeus serpent. He was the central figure of the Egyptian pantheon. His ubiquity in Egyptian myths, the origins and history of the cult, are an extensive topic for a separate podcast. The belief in the decisive role of the sun in the salvation of the souls of the dead is echoed in the prayers of a Theban scribe from the 13th century BC. In his Book of the Dead, we read, "Grant thou that I may reach the heaven of eternity, and the region where thy favorite ones dwell. May I unite with those holy and perfect spirit souls of Khert Neter. May I come forth with them to behold thy beauties as thou rollest on at eventide, as thou journeyest to thy mother Nut, the night sky, and dost place thyself at the right hand in the west. My two hands are raised to thee in praise and thanksgiving when thou settest in life. Behold, thou art the creator of eternity, who art adored when thou settest in Nu. I have set thee in my heart, without wavering, O thou who art more divine than the gods." At the beginning of the Old Kingdom, the cult of the great creator, the sun Ra, previously but the eye of the heavenly Horus, dominated Egyptian religion. The climax of the solar cult begins during the 4th dynasty and lasts until the end of the Old Kingdom. The living gods, the Pharaohs, formerly incarnations of the highest god, Horus, become the sons of Ra. However, they still remain the only guarantors of maintaining the cosmic balance of Ma'at. The first rulers calling themselves sons of Ra are the son of the great Khufu, Djedefre, from the 26th century BC, whose name means enduring like Ra. His brother and successor Khafre, which means appearing like Ra. Since then, it was believed that the pharaohs were conceived by Ra himself. As the Golden Age slowly ended, the authority of the rulers gradually decreased. After the fall of the dynasty, the god Ra strengthened his position together with his priests of Heliopolis. The founder of the 5th dynasty was most likely a high priest of Ra, and the last ruler decided to be the first to decorate the interior of his pyramid in Saqqara with the pyramid texts. The oldest religious text in Egypt, extensive and complete, are the pyramid texts of King Unas from the 24th century BC. Unas had the walls of the burial chamber and corridors covered with hieroglyphic texts containing instructions and spells, serving a single specific purpose: achieving the eternal life. The pyramid texts include the emergence of a new great religion, the religion of Osiris, who, as the god of the dead, promised eternal life in the final union of the ruler with himself. Reviving the ancient fertility cults associated with the earth and the moon, Osirian theology is intertwined with the previously dominant cult of the sun, the great god of heaven Ra, and his decisive role in achieving eternal life. This is the earliest text describing the journey of a solar barque. Her destination was the distant Duat, hidden among the stars, the land of the dead, existing in another spiritual dimension. The solar barque itself was depicted rather consistently as a typical Egyptian papyrus boat with a sickle-shaped stern decorated with the eye of Horus and a solar mat draped over the prow. It seems that it was important for the Egyptians to present it as a real physical boat, such as the one that early dynastic rulers buried near their graves, and that Khufu prepared for himself, burying it near his pyramid, and which, by the way, has been preserved in perfect condition to this day. Most funerary texts describe two solar barques. Traveling by day, the barque Madjet to the west, and the barque Mesektet to the east by night. They are easy to distinguish on ancient reliefs and paintings by their prow facing one side of the world. When presented together, they are arranged prow to prow, showing the entire solar cycle in one image. Huge distance. Ra sailed all the way to the cold waters of the outer limits of cosmos and traveled back in just 24 hours. The properties of the solar barque, such as its incredible speed, are described in the Book of the Dead belonging to the 19th dynasty scribe Ani. Quote, May he, Ani, advance, even as thou dost advance, without cessation, even as thy majesty ceaseth not to advance, even for a moment. With great strides thou dost in one little moment pass over limitless distances which would need millions and hundreds of thousands of years for a man to pass over. The sun's continuous 24-hour journey begins at sunrise, when the gates of the eastern horizon to the Netherworld are open. The American Egyptologist James Peter Allen describes how the ancient Egyptians pictured the route of the sun's journey. Quote, "The sun's apparent path across the sky throughout the year follows a 12-degree wide arc from east to west, known as the Winding Canal. The region of the sky to its south was known as the Marsh of Reeds, and that to its north, the Marsh of Rest or Marsh of Offerings. These names reflect the Egyptians' experience of their own country, where the marshes of the delta gradually gave way to the Mediterranean Sea. This solar and stellar theology made the pyramid builders look at the night sky, searching for final answers. In the Milky Way, they saw a mirror image of the Holy Nile, the beaten path of stars, leading to paradise. What was this paradise according to solar theology? This is the place where the son of Ra, the divine ruler, enters the kingdom of Atum, the first creator god, to unite with the first son as the perfect soul Ak, become the source of life, witness of Zeptepi the first time, and constantly renew and rejuvenate in eternally recurrent light. For eternity, the deceased king, united with the god Ra, was traveling through the cosmos on his barque of millions of years. In order for the Pharaoh's fate to be fulfilled, he had to set off on a dangerous journey to the Netherworld in the company of his divine father. Although the threat of failure of the Pharaoh's posthumous journey to the Duat is not explicitly stated, the pyramid texts inform about the mortal threat awaiting the sun god himself. Maintaining creation and extending the life cycle is a difficult task, and the dangers along the solar barque's route are real. To guard against the unprepared, Unas ordered spells and advice regarding this dangerous journey to be placed in his pyramid. The pyramid texts are only found inside his pyramid. The vast outdoor funerary complex doesn't contain them, as they were intended only for Unas, because in those times salvation was provided exclusively for the ruler. The pyramid texts will be copied by the kings of the 6th dynasty, but the last record can be found in the small pyramid of Kakara-Ibi, the Memphite ruler of the 8th dynasty from the first intermediate period. The pyramid texts from which later funerary texts such as the Book of the Dead evolved must have been preserved also on papyri, making their content available in later centuries. An exact copy of Unas texts was found in the tomb of a priest from Memphis from the 12th century BC. One of the functions of the pyramid texts was to enable the deceased to become Ak. In Egyptian, the funerary texts were called Ak makers. Two forces were to play a key role in this transition, the son of Ra and Osiris. Ra doesn't travel alone on his barque. He's accompanied by other gods, sometimes large groups of them. They are often minor deities that perform a specific function on board, such as controller of the barque or vigilant one. On a dangerous journey, it's important for the god to have with him the deities Sia, perception, Heka, magic, Hu, speech. In paintings and reliefs showing Ra's night barque, we often see a snake surrounding it. This is a mysterious creature that inhabits the Duat, Mehen, ally and protector of the sun. Of course, Ra brings on board the real celebrities of the Egyptian pantheon. Already in the pyramid texts, we see his companion Seth, a thunderous god of storm and desert with great power, a tireless defender of the sun, of whom later Osirian myths made the villain and great rival of Horus, but his original role wasn't forgotten even then. The dispute with Horus over the rule over Egypt after the death of Osiris is described in a myth recorded on the so-called Chester Beatty papyri from the 20th dynasty. Although the majority of the divine tribunal clearly supports Horus in the dispute with his uncle, the chief judge Ra always sides with Seth, who says, "I am Seth, greatest in virility among the Ennead, for I slay the opponent of Ra daily, while I am at the prow of the barque of the millions, whereas not any other god is able to do it. I should receive the office of Osiris." After the final verdict, when Horus was entrusted with the throne of Osiris, Ra takes Seth on his never-ending journey on a celestial barque. Quote, "Let Seth, son of Nut, be delivered to me so that he may dwell with me, being in my company as a son, and he shall thunder in the sky and be feared." The role of Seth, defender of the sun, functioned alongside his protective role over kings, already in early dynastic times. Seth stands on the bow of the sun barque, fights off the demons attacking the sun and repels the serpent Apophis with his spear. The Egyptians believed that his clashes with Apophis were the cause of thunderstorms. In one of the Middle Kingdom coffin texts, we meet Seth as a figure repelling demonic snakes. Quote, "Spell to drive away snakes, which are in the garden in the realm of the dead. A path has been cleared for him by Seth." Besides Seth, Ra is sometimes accompanied by other members of the Ennead, such as Isis, Nephthys, Geb, and Shu. Other ancient warrior deities also appear on a Ra's night barque, including the goddesses Neith, Sekhmet, Bastet, and of course, Horus. In the text of his pyramid, Unas mentions Thoth, the god of wisdom, who also accompanied Ra on his perilous journey. Quote, "The water of Unis is wine, like the sun. Unis will circumnavigate the sky like the sun. Unis shall course the sky like Thoth." If we add to this the truth symbolized by the goddess Mat, sailing alongside Ra or towing a barque, we have a full picture of what the solar barque represented in the eyes of the Egyptians, the sum of all virtues, good in itself. As Ra continues his journey westward, the intensity of his light decreases. The great god grows old and becomes weaker. The sun disappears below the horizon, leaving a reddish color in the sky. The ancient Egyptians saw it as the blood of a dying god. I must admit that these beautiful sunsets in Egypt are particularly exciting, especially those observed over ancient necropolises. They have something mystical about them that I don't experience in other countries. Darkness reigns over Egypt. The people no longer see their god in the sky, so there's an uncertain wait. It's not sure whether the sun will rise in the morning. A dead god enters Duat, full of dangers. At the moment of death, another transformation takes place. His new form is the ram-headed father of all gods, Atum. He boards his night barque called Mesektet, on which he'll travel from west to east through the Netherworld. The route of his journey is shown in the funerary books of the New Kingdom as the heavenly body of the goddess Nut, who swallows the sun. The sun disappearing on the horizon is the moment of Ra's sailing into the Duat, another dimension, the land of the dead. Egyptian iconography, especially the spectacular reproduction of scenes from the Book of Amduat on the ceilings of the royal tombs of the New Kingdom, show this moment poetically. The mother of Ra, the goddess of the sky, arches over the earth with her cosmic naked body, swallows the setting sun, which then travels along her body to reach her womb, where he is reborn to start a new day. The Egyptians believed that the actual entrance to the land of the dead was somewhere in the western sky, on the outer limits of cosmos, known as the cold waters, Kebehu. As we already know, the term Kebehu referred to both metaphorical boundaries, such as heaven, and terrestrial, geographical ones. Foreign barbaric lands inhabited by children of chaos were also referred to as Kebehu. The cold waters of Kebehu are therefore the border of creation, the place where the sky meets the endless dark waters of the ancient chaos Nun, the space beyond the visible sky of this world, where the stars disappear behind the astronomical horizon. It's in this distant, mysterious place that the entrance to Duat, the land of the dead, is supposed to be located. Together with the sun, dead stars also enter into the Duat. Their further fate depends solely on Ra. As they rise and then float in the night sky, they don't rotate during the journey, and as a result, descend into the Duat upside down. God Ra sets them aright so that, reborn again, they can continue their journey in the opposite direction. Interestingly, some funerary texts also describe the souls of the deceased as descending to the Netherworld upside down. This is a dangerous position for the dead, so of course they need help. Only the damned remain inverted. I observed many such enigmatic representations in the 20th dynasty tombs in the Valley of the Kings, especially in the tombs of Ramesses VI and Ramesses IX. Black figures shown upside down are incorporated into circles or discs, often with a smaller disc above the head. Traditionally in Egyptian art, a figure with a small disc floating above the head symbolizes a star. According to the Book of Night, at the gates of the western horizon, Ra is awaited by the western bus, in the form of jackals, who are responsible for towing the solar barque into the Netherworld. The nature of Duat complicates the story of the sun's voyage through the cosmic waters among the stars. The description of the land of the dead in the Book of Amduat, large green fields resembling the fertile Nile Valley, as well as endless deserts, large caves, and dark abysses. The dual nature of the Duat as both chthonic and celestial seems contradictory. However, assuming that it's a spiritual, multidimensional place that can't be fully understood, we can ignore the contradictions described in the funerary books. The astral nature of the Duat in the pyramid texts is the result of the solar religion of the Old Kingdom, while the coffin texts of the Middle Kingdom, under the influence of the Osirian tradition, place the land of the dead rather underground, whereas the texts of the New Kingdom somehow balance between these two concepts with an emphasis to the sky. Especially the Book of Nut leaves no doubt, as in the pyramid text, Duat is a starry domain. One of the hieroglyphic symbols of the land of the dead is a star in a circle. Duat is the place of rebirth, not only of human souls, but also of gods and the entire cosmos. Inextricably linked with the nature of the Divine Mother Nut, in whose body all cosmic activity takes place, the death and birth of stars and planets. Immediately after crossing the western portico of the horizon, Ra must cross a 300-mile-long water corridor. The waterway of Ra takes up the entire first hour. Beyond the second gate, called He Who Devours All, in the second hour, Ra reaches Warness, a region of the Duat dominated by a huge body of water, a freshwater sea surrounded by lush vegetation and fertile fields. The third hour is almost the same looking land, with another large water body of identical size. These are the so-called Waters of Osiris. The fourth and fifth hours are called the realm of Sokar, the Memphite god of the dead. It's a vast desert through which the solar barque needs to be towed. At this time, according to the Book of Amduat, the vessel takes a serpentine form. According to the Book of Gates, which largely corresponds to the Book of Amduat, the judgment of Osiris takes place between the 5th and 6th hour. It's a great luck for souls to encounter the god Ra sailing through the Duat. God blesses the dead, gives them light and breath. Gates open to him through which unfortunate souls stuck in different parts of the Duat can pass. On its way, Ra also encounters a lot of human remains floating chaotically in the waters of Nun. These are the dead who had no chance for a proper burial, unmummified, buried in pits in the desert, or the poorest, thrown into the Nile. In the Book of the Dead we read, "O great light who rolled across Nu, thou dost raise up the generations of men from the deep source of thy waters." According to the Book of Gates, those floating will be found in the 9th hour of the sun's nocturnal journey through the Duat. gracious Ra orders them to be taken aboard his boat. In Amduat's illustrations, those who died by drowning or were killed by crocodiles, whose bodies are lost, end up in the valley of those turned upside down. Without God's intervention, their fate seems hopeless. In the 6th hour of the journey through the Duat, in the deepest part of the Netherworld, there's the tomb of Osiris, surrounded by the primordial waters of Nun. The solar deity unites with Osiris, as evidenced by the text of the Book of Caverns from Ramessid times. Ra unites with the corpse of Osiris to continue his journey east as Osiris-Ra. This new double figure is depicted in numerous representations in the tombs of the 19th and 20th dynasties, a mummified god with a ram's head. At this point, time stops for the traveling god. There were two concepts of time in Egyptian religion: cyclical time represented by the sun and the eternal time of Osiris. This makes it easier for Ra to fulfill all his duties before he reaches the end of his journey. The unification of the sun god with the god of the dead dates back to the 19th dynasty. The mummiform image of Osiris-Ra with the head of a ram in the arms of Isis and Nephthys can be found in the perfectly preserved tomb of Nefertari, the great royal wife of Ramesses II. An almost perfect copy of this scene can be found in the tomb of Nakht-Amun in Deir el-Medina, a famous workers' village in western Thebes. It's highly probable that Nakht-Amun personally decorated the tomb of Nefertari. The text attached to the painting reads, "This Ra rests in Osiris, who rests in Ra." The Osirian cult gradually influenced the religion of the Old Kingdom, in which the sun god reigned supreme. In the pyramid text, we already have two doctrines side by side. They seem to be independent of each other and even contradictory. This state of affairs couldn't last forever. The established position of Osiris in the New Kingdom as the god of the dead and the continuing popularity of the solar cult, strengthened by the appearance of Amon-Ra, resulted in a new concept of Osiris as the nocturnal aspect of Ra. Thus the former state solar religion worshipping the Pharaoh, who retained the title of Son of the Sun, introduced already in the 4th dynasty, was enriched with an Osirian element, a faith popular among the lower classes, a folk religious movement. So seemingly contradictory religious traditions, as it turned out, complement each other perfectly. Ra, dying beyond the horizon, revives Osiris, the king of the dead, from whom the living god, personifying the Pharaoh, Horus, is born, like a young sun in the morning. Although the dual nature of the god that the Pharaoh becomes after death seems complicated enough, at the end of the New Kingdom we encounter even more complex concepts of the dead sun god. In the tomb of Ramesses IX, we learn about the quadruple nature of the king traveling through the afterlife as Ra, Osiris, Ptah, Thoth. Why not? Either way, all these gods were aspects of the hidden god Amun, as were the cosmic waters through which they sailed. It was at the time of the greatest popularity of the religion of Amun that various theological traditions were seamlessly combined into one. All the gods of Upper and Lower Egypt were one in Amon-Ra. The term Solar Osirian Unity was proposed by the Polish archaeologist Professor Andrzej Niwiński as a principle of the theology of the state of Amun in Thebes of the 21st dynasty, even though this motive already appears in the royal tombs of the New Kingdom. In the Book of Amduat of Ramesses IV, we read, "This god, Osiris foremost of the West, is in this fashion, the light of Ra having entered into his corpse, the utter darkness having been illuminated beneath his soles, the mysterious image being beneath his feet. His Ba follows Ra." And in the tomb of Ramesses VI, we read about Osiris, the corpse in which Ra is. The most important sacred Egyptian text describing Osiris-Ra nocturnal journey through the Netherworld is the funerary text Amduat, literally that which is in the afterworld. The name comes from the hieroglyphic notation Imi Duat, meaning what is in the Duat. The oldest complete record of the text comes from the tomb of Thutmose III from the 15th century BC, initially called the Book of Seshnat Iment, the Book of the Hidden Chamber. In the New Kingdom, this funerary text, unlike, for example, the Book of the Dead, was reserved exclusively for pharaohs. During his 12-hour journey, Ra travels through 12 regions of the Duat, each with its own landscape and inhabitants. The wonderfully illustrated text of the book consists, of course, of 12 chapters describing the progress of the divine barque. After death, the pharaoh was to set off on such a journey, following the example of his father Ra, and at the end of this cosmic voyage, he would finally unite with the sun god and thus achieve eternal life. The content of this cosmological book, unlike, for example, almost 1,000 years older pyramid texts, was never changed, reproduced according to a clear scheme, also consistently and systematically illustrated. Like later New Kingdom cosmological books, the Amduat refers to the key role the sun plays in the act of creation, as well as death, rebirth, and regeneration through its solar cycle. It's also an invaluable source describing the nature of the Netherworld and the journey through it of the god Ra on his barque. According to the Book of Amduat, during the 7th hour, a dangerous moment occurs when the waters dry up and the solar barque lands on the back of the serpent Apophis. Apophis, also called Apep, is the sun god's greatest enemy. He's the most powerful demon in the universe and the oldest, older than all gods. This gigantic serpent existed in the dark cosmic waters of Nun before the first creation took place, before the sun was born in Zet Tepi. Although in late period or Greco-Roman times he was recognized in some theological traditions as the son of Neith, at the time when the great funerary books were written, Apophis wasn't recognized as part of creation. He was an eternal element of the waters of chaos, their aggressive, destructive aspect. He traveled through cosmos to attack and devour everything, especially light, hence was Ra's greatest enemy. Interestingly, the oldest text mentioning Apophis is a record from a tomb located near Esna, belonging to Ankhtifa, a nomarch from the times of the rule of the 9th Heracleopolitan dynasty around 2100 BC. He describes the great famine in Egypt during the first intermediate period, the cause of which was said to be the sandbank of Apophis and the low level of the Nile. Quote, I took care of the towns of Hephat and Hormer at the moment when the sky was clouded and the earth was parched in the wind, and when every man would die of hunger on this sandbank of Apophis. The whole of Upper Egypt was dying of hunger to the point that every man was forced to eat his own children, but I caused that nobody died of hunger in this nome. This famine is confirmed in other sources. Anyway, the solar barque sets aground due to Apophis. Then the famous fight with the serpent takes place in the 7th hour in the cave of Osiris. There's a threat that Osiris-Ra, like the inverted stars, will be thrown into the abyss by Apophis, out of the sky and into the place of total darkness, to the abyss of total destruction, to quote the slaughtering place of the sun. Lost stars that continue to fall reach the area of the Nehaher serpents and are devoured by, quote, those on their mounds of sand. When the solar barque runs aground, stopped by Apophis, Duat briefly reigns in chaos, and a real cataclysm occurs. The numerous demons of the Netherworld, the slaughterers and their Nehaher snakes, who followed Maat's order and punished sinners, begin to punish and destroy the other blessed dead as well. This crisis is accompanied by darkness throughout the Duat, and the creatures inhabiting it scream and shout in terror. During the decisive battle, the god is helped by Duatians, including personifications of the Deacon stars, shown as the arrow-wielding protectors of the sun. The commonly known motive of Ra's fight with the serpent Apophis was often repeated in Egyptian art. What deserves special attention is the image of Ra fighting a large serpent in the form of a cat. Inspired by the description of the 7th hour from the Book of Amduat, fragments of the Book of the Dead, where in a mysterious way Osiris-Ra, when never mentioned together with the primordial god of earth, Shu, takes the form of a cat, is called Miao-A, the great cat. Quote, I am the cat which fought near the Perseus tree in Anu, on the night when the enemies of the Master of the Universe were destroyed. Or, I am the great cat which dwelleth in the seat of truth, wherein the god Shu riseth. In the Ramessid tombs in Deir el-Medina, we come across scenes of a snake fighting with a cat-shaped Ra. Probably the time of the fight and the shape of the opponent led the Egyptians to the conclusion that Ra should take the form of a nocturnal animal, hunting snakes, such as the Egyptian cat in ancient times. According to the Book of the Dead, one of the crewmen of his barque, the god Sia, the personification of perception and intellect, compared Ra to a cat when fighting with Apophis. So the comparison must have been apt. Meow in ancient Egyptian, as you may have guessed, means cat. Some sources point to the god of magic Heka, who accompanies Ra on his barque as helping him navigate the sandy ridge of Apophis. In the Amduat versions from the late and Greco-Roman periods, the decisive contribution to the victory over Apep was made by Isis, whose cult was then becoming dominant in Egypt. Together with her sister Nephthys, Heka, and the scorpion goddess Serket, she used her powerful magic to neutralize him. Quote, Isis fells thee with her magic. She closes thy mouth, she takes away thy power of movement, and she will not give Ra over unto thee forever and ever. This his spear is turned back in thy flesh. Be silent, fall, thou shalt die and not live, for Isis and Nephthys fell thee. Together they avert thy rage. Retire, turn thee back. In a separate funeral text, the Book of Overthrowing Apep from Ptolemaic times, we learn about the curse cast on the defeated serpent of chaos. Quote, O Apep, thou foe of Ra, thou shalt die, die. May you perish, may thy name perish. Thy teeth be soft, thy poison spilled. May thou be blind and unable to see. Fall upon thy face, be felled, felled, be crushed, crushed, be annihilated, annihilated, be slain, slain, be cut to pieces, be cut up, cut up. The victory over Apophis arouses joy among the inhabitants of Duat. According to the Book of Amduat, all entities approach Ra and jump for joy. This restoration of order and confirmation of the act of creation ensures the continued existence of ordered space in the cosmos. From the 8th to the 12th hour, the barque of Osiris Ra moves through the dark caverns, and the 12th, the last hour, is the rebirth of the god. At sunrise, the sun god is depicted as a scarab named Khepri, which means arise or to become. This sun figure plays an important role in Heliopolitan creation myth as the earliest form of the sun, rising over the primordial Benben Hill, the oldest source of light illuminating the dark waters of Nun's chaos at the moment of creation. The symbol of the scarab was beloved by the Egyptians, and images of Khepri were ubiquitous as a symbol of their solar religion and a lucky talisman. The reborn young sun rising on the horizon has a particularly significant religious meaning for the Egyptians. It is a proof visible to all of the defeat of death, a promise of salvation also for the souls of the dead who travel west in the hope of achieving a new life. Khepri rises on the horizon that the Egyptians called Akhet. Graphically, they showed Akhet as a solar disk between two hills. This hieroglyph referred to both the eastern and western horizons. The characteristic pylons of Egyptian temples were supposed to refer to this symbol, as did the pyramids of the Old Kingdom, with a clearly solar connotation. In ancient times, the Great Pyramid of Giza was called Akhet Khufu, the horizon of Khufu. The famous capital of the heretical pharaoh, the sun worshipper Akhenaten, was called Akhetaten, the horizon of the Aten. The personification of Akhet was the deity Aker, depicted in the form of a lion or sphinx. The transformation of Ra into the Scarab Khepri in the 12th hour, illustrated in surviving copies of the Book of Amduat, is perhaps the most enigmatic. Ra at this point often appears in the form of the great creator god Atum, accompanied by winged snakes, having legs for unknown reasons, and stars. Osiris and Ra separate. Osiris remains in the Duat, while Ra enters the day barque to start a new day. This moment when the reborn sun, Khepri, arises on the horizon is reflected in the hymn to the rising sun from the Book of the Dead, from the 18th dynasty. Homage to thee, O thou who hast come as Khepera, Khepera the creator of the gods. Thou art seated on thy throne, thou risest up in the sky, illumining thy mother Nut. Thou art seated on thy throne as the king of the gods. Thou creator of mortals, and of the companies of the gods, of the south and of the north, of the west and of the east. Ascribe your praise to Ra, the Lord of heaven, the King, life, strength, and health, the maker of the gods. Give your thanks unto him in his beneficent form, which is enthroned in the Ated boat. Being celestial, praise thee. Beings terrestrial, praise thee. Thoth and the goddess Maat, mark out thy course for thee day by day and every day. Thine enemy the serpent had been given over to the fire. The sons of revolt shall never more rise up. The rejuvenated in the womb of the heavenly mother Nut, sun, boards the day barque Manjet to set off for the west. Born in the east, Ra is adored by the eastern Bas in the form of praying baboons. The sun apes worship the sun and are also present in the first hour of Amduat, when at sunset the barque of Ra enters the Netherworld. Baboons were associated with the sunrise due to their loud cries with which they greet the sun in the morning. After sunrise, a transition phase occurs. The god transforms into his mature falcon-headed form, usually called Ra Horachte, Horus of the horizons. Ra's daily journey through the sky is the oldest motif of the Egyptian solar religion, as he illuminates the earth and gives it life, but at the same time struggles with dangers. According to some traditions, Ra encounters his greatest enemy, the serpent Apophis, already at noon, and above the heads of unnoticing mortals, there's an epic battle against chaos to save all creation and maintain cosmic balance, Maat. The brave sun god encounters Apophis several more times, especially during his night journey through the Netherworld. The sun arose again. Seeing its glow, anxiety and uncertainty pass. Life triumphs over death. A beautiful hymn to the rising sun from the Book of the Dead says, "Rising on the horizon of heaven, and thou illuminest the two lands with rays of turquoise light, O Ra, the divine man-child, the heir of eternity, self-begotten and self-born, king of the earth, prince of the Duat, governor of Aker, thou dost come from the water god, thou dost spring from the sky god Nun, who doth cherish thee and order thy members. O thou God of life, thou Lord of love, all men live when thou shinest. Thou art crowned King of the gods. However, the joy doesn't last long. It will get dark soon, and everything starts all over again. I hope you learned something new about the beliefs of ancient Egyptians. Thank you for listening. Please let me know in the comments what you would like to hear about next time. Don't forget to like my video and subscribe to my channel. Goodbye, and see you on the next one.